Hello, and welcome to this episode of Spotlight on the Divorce Expert. And today I have the real pleasure to introduce and to get to interview somebody who I've talked to several times. She is just an amazing person. Her name is Jenni Rock. She is based out of the UK. And what Jenni does is something that is really unique in my experience in working with within the divorce industry and the divorce field. Jenni is a toxic co-parenting breakdown recovery expert. She's also a speaker and a coach, and she helps parents navigate the emotional fallout of separation and high conflict co-parenting. And this is something that's becoming more and more critical. We're hearing a lot more about the damage that this high conflict co-parenting style can cause on children. And so Jenni really helps her clients to deal with issues of facing things that are called parent alienation, false allegations, and ongoing provocation from a toxic ex through the use of practical strategies that are rooted in improving communication, setting boundaries, and dealing with mindset issues. So I want to welcome Jenni, and I can't wait to get into this topic.
Well, thank you for having me again, Mardi. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you again.
Well, and it's always great to speak with you, Jenni. And I think one thing I always do throw out here at the very beginning of these, there are lots of different terms that are used in the public and in the court system. And there's even different ways that these words are used in different countries and in different jurisdictions. So I want to clarify that we are going to be using the term parent alienation as a series of behaviors that parents may engage in. That is not to say that, and I'm speaking for myself here now, I don't agree that, with the whole parent alienation syndrome, that's a mental health disorder or that it's diagnosable, but it is something that can be tracked by these negative behaviors that parents are using. Jenni, I didn't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm noticing you're nodding. So are we in agreement on that, why we're using that term?
Yeah, I think we all have choices in terms of how we choose to behave in this world. And there are times when people need help and support. And I am all for giving people the help and support they need. However, it's very easy to fall into a label when actually the label is not actually what it is. It's convenient to have a label rather than dealing with the actual problem.
Yes. And quite often, again, not to put too fine a point on it, but a lot of these labels tend to be gender specific. So, the abuser or the toxic person often ends up looking really sophisticated and really put together in court because they have that personality that they are, they see themselves as kind of above the law and above the world, and that everybody's supposed to do what they want. And then the parent who's struggling, who's been abused perhaps for years through gaslighting, manipulation, coercive control, they look a little bit unhinged in the court system because they're flustered, they're stressed, nobody's listened to them. They've been trying to be a great parent and they keep getting squashed by the system. And so, these labels end up becoming detrimental over time.
Totally. And, it's such a sad situation, I think, for not only the children, but also the grown-ups. Not just the person that is on the receiving end of that behavior, but also the person that is dishing out that behavior, because that person is reflecting outwards what they are feeling internally. And to see that, you think, wow, that person must be really unhappy inside to be so determined to inflict this kind of damage on somebody else because they're hurting.
Yeah.
And we don't know why they're hurt. We don't know how that happened. All we can deal with is the here and now. But the reality is you can only help somebody that wants to be helped. So we can only work with the people that actually want to make the difference, to want to make the changes.
Yes,
Because with the best will in the world, I can talk until I'm blue in the face, but if they don't want to make a change, they don't want to make a change. So
exactly. Exactly. And the more that people use these damaging behaviors, I really believe as kids get older and become teens and young adults, they become very quickly aware of how they were manipulated by that parent. And so a lot of times these, you know, making now we don't want parents to put their kids in unsafe situations, but false allegations that the other parent is unsafe or abusive or toxic, um, kids become discerning, right, as adults, and they start seeing, wait a second, everybody that mom or dad dates all of a sudden gets labeled toxic and difficult. And kids are smart; they learn. And I've seen situations where a child that stayed away from a parent because they were gaslighted and manipulated, completely reverses that when they get to be an adult and spends time with the parent that they were, in quotes, afraid of before. And then the parent that did that alienating behavior becomes the person that they don't want to have anything to do with.
and you know, like you say, children are smart. They pick up on these things and they see happening around them in both homes. You know, if they're having access to both homes, they're seeing what's happening in both homes. And then they're going around to a friend's house for a play, and they're thinking, well, their parents don't behave like that. Or their mum's not with their dad, but she doesn't, they get on. What's on here? So what I'm experiencing is different from what they're experiencing. So there's something here, and then they'll start to question things, and they'll start to ask questions, they'll start to want to know more. And they are very discerning, like you say, and they will be very blunt about it and say, no, I have no interest. And I think what I am seeing with a lot of young adults, they're sort of the same age as my son, he's now 23. I'm seeing quite a raft of kids of that age that are actually quite brutal in terms of what they will and will not tolerate. And when somebody is not behaving in a way that they find acceptable, they find it very easy to cut them off.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether that's a logistical thing, but I'm seeing it not just with my son and his friends, but also seeing it with parents that I'm working with and their kids. And I'm hearing that, the kids are actually drawing that line in the sand,
Right.
because they no longer feel that they have to behave in a certain way to gain acceptance from that parent.
Yeah. Yeah. Jenni, we kind of jump right into the conversation. Can I just backtrack a little bit? And
Yeah, sure.
because you specialize in specifically the co-parenting aspect of this, what are some of the early signs and of this potential issue building as you're going, maybe even in the early stages of the divorce? Are there some red flags that you could tell people, hey, if you start hearing or seeing this, you might want to look at getting some support really quickly?
Yeah, I think for me, normally it's the boundaries start becoming very blurred. Um, so instead of the other parent of being respectful in terms of, well, this is my time and this is your time, and they'll deliver them back late. They will hold back information or hold back items that the child may find necessary for school, for example. And it'll be like, well, send them to school, so you have to provide that. All of a sudden, they're not being very cooperative. And it might be that they've never been cooperative. And this is just an escalation of the behavior. But things like disrespect of your boundaries, of your time, disrespect of the relationship that you each have with your children. So one parent may be trying really hard not to badmouth the other parent. So one parent may be trying really hard not to say nasty things about the other parent because they don't want the child to hate the other parent. You know, that they want their child to have the best opportunity, the best life that they can have. And, you know, for many people, that's to have both parents in their lives. Not the case, but in most cases, it's, you know, it's always good to have more adults that love you than less. So it's that alienation that starts to creep in, and the child is hearing very different things, and then the child is kind of saying, "Oh yeah, but that's because of, you know, you said this. So dad got mad because you said this. Mom got mad because you said that."
Right.
And the child is being sucked into the grown-up dispute rather than the grown-ups figuring it out between them and letting the child just be a child.
Right. And I've been starting to hear this a lot more, where the child they're at parent A's and then they go to parent B's and they tell a story about what happened the last time they were at parent B's house. That's not at all what happened. It's a total misrepresentation of something. And I'm thinking of a specific situation where child was at parent B's, fell off a bike, learning how to ride. Perfectly normal. Every child falls off a bike learning to ride. Yeah. You know, parent B was out there helping the child, supporting them. Child goes back to parent A's. Next scheduled weekend with parent B, the child comes over and starts talking about how they're scared to ride the bike with parent B because last time they fell off and it was all that parent's fault. And that's not how the child recalled that story until parent A started helping them, in quotes, remember it the right way.
Absolutely. And it's so unfair on the child because that child is being forced to cooperate with parent A because they desperately want or need the approval of parent A. They're doing what they need to do to survive in that situation.
Right.
So that child is like Play-Doh. They're very easily manipulated because they just want to please. They want to be loved. They want to be accepted. They don't want to upset parent A, so they're not going to fight over it.
Right.
You know, they're told most of the time. And if parent A continually repeats, well, this happened, well, they can't have been holding on to the bike properly because that's why you fell off. Right. You know, they weren't doing their job properly because you wouldn't have fallen off if they had been doing their job properly. And, you know, it gets twisted. And there's no need for it.
Right.
Absolutely no need for it.
And also too, I think that quite often kids know that parent A will withhold their love and affection. That is one of the techniques of these people, is that if the child stands up and says, "No, that's not what happened," then parent A goes, "Well, you know what? Go to your room. Don't tell me lies." And then, so they're not necessarily, again, this is all very manipulative. There may not be any physical threat, or there may not ever be any physical inappropriate action, but it's that coercive control level that's being exerted on these kids. So, Jenni, if I know you really support your people to help deal with these things, how do people find you, or how do people recognize that they need some help, that they are dealing with a toxic person or a person that doesn't understand what they're doing? Because I'm guessing some people honestly don't get it, and they do make changes if they're using this inappropriate behavior. But unless it's brought to light, they don't really know to change. So long-winded question here, but how do people find you or recognize that, hey, I need somebody to help me with this?
Normally, people find me by word of mouth. So quite often, people will say, oh God, they'll talk to their friends, and their friends will, sort of know somebody who knows somebody who maybe has heard of me or spoken to me or worked with me or whatever. So I get from lawyers as well, both in the UK and also in the US. And sometimes people just spot me on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, and just kind of see the content that I'm putting out. But I think the first step that anybody has to go kind of before they even get to me is to accept that there is a problem. Because for so long, people will try and make excuses for that behavior. Oh, they just upset me, or they're just cross with me. Oh, it's my fault because I wanted the divorce. They'll make excuses. They will find reasons as to why they shouldn't be doing, whatever, why they shouldn't sit, because they will want to try and keep the peace,
right,
as much as possible. And one person really has kind of hit that level where they're thinking, I can't do this anymore. That's when we can start to work on making it better. It's kind of, it's almost like Alcoholics Anonymous. It's kind of, you have to accept that there is a problem to be able to deal with it.
Sure. And let me ask you, do you have to, let's say you're in this co-parenting relationship, or perhaps you're very early in the divorce and you're starting to see some of those boundary blurring and some of those manipulation of the kids and things. Can you work with just one person, or do you have to work with the couple, or what's your preference in how you work with people?
I just work with the parent that wants to change. So I don't work with the couple. So there's no blurring of any lines in terms of he said, she said, whatever. Basically, I work with the person that sees there is a problem and wants to address that problem. Because it only takes one person to actually change the whole dynamic of that communication. It doesn't take too long before that person's behaviors start to filter in to the child and also to the other parent, in terms of their behavior, the way that they deal with things and the way that they communicate. Because a lot of it is about boundary setting. A lot of it is about, deciding what they will and will not tolerate. Where's your dividing line? Where's your line in the sand? What are you going to fight over? What's not worth fighting over? Let's face it, the $10 trainers didn't come back in the bag. Really, is it really worth a fight?
Right.
I mean, with my son, I remember when I would do back to school shopping, because in the UK they generally wear uniforms to school, he would have 10 sets of everything. One, because he couldn't go a whole day without keeping it clean and keep everything clean. I don't know what he did. I reckon he went to school and rolled in the mud or something. And I had to have a second set of not just a couple, but sort of like 4 pairs of everything to go to his dad's, because for some reason I was responsible for all the school clothes buying, and it was my responsibility to clothe him while he was at dad's. So he had a set of school uniform, a full set there, and lots of sets here. But it's just about making sure that we do the best that we can, not just for the child, but for ourselves as well, because it does take a toll on. I'm sorry, the light is.
That's okay.
Really
That's okay. It's nice. We're recording in the summer. The sun is shining. Hey.
But yeah, it's the child that is going to bear the burden. But us as adults, if we don't recognize that there is a problem and address that problem, it's going to continue repeating and repeating and repeating throughout our lives, no matter what. So
Right.
when we go into our next relationship, that pattern is going to repeat because we haven't addressed it.
Right.
And then we start all over again.
Yes.
And
yeah.
And it's not healthy, and it can be better. So much better.
And I love this message, because so many times, parents get into that co-parenting relationship and it's rocky and it's a little bit rough. And I'm just going to say this. It's rough even for parents that are really amicable and there's none of this going on. The first 6 months of co-parenting is really tough. Sometimes the kids don't like it. Sometimes, there's all kinds of things and all the day-to-day minutia of having two households for the kids. It's a lot of work and there's things that get forgotten and missed and all this kind of stuff. But I really love the idea that you are working with the person that wants to change and giving them strategies that they can implement that's going to benefit not just them, but their kids. And even if the other parent wants to continue to be a jerk, your behavior has a positive impact. And as long as the kids have one parent doing the right thing, I think they're going to be fine,
Yeah. And it's, you become that safe parent.
Yeah.
The person that they feel safe talking to, the person that they feel safe sharing their life with, the person that they feel safe spending time with, because you are providing that child with an emotionally and physically safe space for them to just be a child,
right?
For them to just enjoy life, to do to do the daft things with, to do the fun stuff with, but also to know what they're not allowed to do. That there are lines in the sand in terms of the child's behavior, what will be accepted and what won't be accepted.
Right.
And I know my son was a teenager or sort of preteen and the hormones were raging and he would suddenly get angry. And I would say to him, okay, honey, you're behaving really angry right now. Is there a reason for that? Or is it just come from nowhere and it's just hormones? What do you think? And then normally it would be a case of, I don't know why I feel so angry. I just feel so angry. And I would say, okay, well, why don't you go off to your room and just go and, chill out for a bit. And when you're feeling a little bit more calm, then come back down. And you know what? It involved no shouting, no screaming matches, no timeout, no punishment, no retraction of any kind of rewards. It was purely and simply me recognizing that his hormones were surging and he was having a hard time managing and he just needed that bit of safe space. And that worked wonders. And, our relationship now, to be honest, I think I've got about 24 children that I don't know about because all of his friends seem to have adopted me as their mother. But they keep asking where the paperwork is, and I'm like, it's in the post. Don't worry about it. It's in the post. But yeah, so it's about becoming that emotionally safe space where they can relax and just be themselves and be an idiot if they want to be an idiot and know they are going to be able to trust you with everything.
Yes. And you've got that unconditional love for them. You're not going to withhold it or,
No, they're not. It's not conditional in terms of, well, you have to say what I believe you should say. Otherwise, I don't know anymore.
Yeah. Jenni, I want to ask you a question. And this just crossed my mind when you were speaking earlier about the sets of clothing in the different households. Do you think that the use of mediation and the development of really comprehensive co-parenting plans where parents are talking this out with a professional and coming to agreement with each other in that mediation, do you see that that's having any impact on how parents are able to truly co-parent rather than parallel parent after the divorce?
Yeah, well, I think all breaks in co-parenting come down to a lack of agreements. If they can't make an agreement over something, how are they ever going to be able to communicate effectively to be able to co-parent? And quite often the co-parenting agreements are quite wishy-washy. They're not detailed. They've not got all of the things covered that need to be covered, because realistically, you need to take it to the nth detail,
Mm-hmm.
because then everybody knows where they stand. So, you know, are they going to have spare clothes at the other parent's house that the other parent keeps up to date in terms of, the number of wear that they have there, and, socks and clothes
Right.
and what have you? Or, when they send, one of the complaints I often got was they send their child in nice clothes, and when they get them back, they come back in terrible clothes.
Yes.
And my attitude to that is, well, why are you sending them in like nice clothes?
Right.
Why are you sending them in clothes that matter? It's kind of like, would you lend money to a person and get upset if they didn't you back? Because if you do, then why are you lending it out?
Right.
Because it's like
Yes.
gambling. You should never give more than you are prepared to lose.
Yes.
So,
Or at least the
so
first time it happens, have a conversation with the parent, because maybe
yeah,
they honestly didn't pay attention to what clothes the kids came in.
could be.
But if it happens a second
Absolutely.
time and you keep doing it, it's not their fault anymore,
No, no, no,
participating in
absolutely.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a saying, isn't there? Fool me once,
Yes.
shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on
Shame on
me.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very much a case of, well, why keep doing something and expect a different result?
Yeah.
Because you keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result, and that's never going to happen until you change what you're doing.
So I love what you said. And I'm in total agreement with you. And I so admire what you do to help parents in this situation. But if you are a parent and you are going through a mediated settlement and you have two kids under the age of 10 and your co-parenting plan is 4 pages, there is a problem with your co-parenting plan because it's not comprehensive. So you really need to, and I work with, and I'm sure in the UK as well. In the United States, there are a lot of mediators now that just specialize in creating co-parenting plans. So they are sometimes called in. And I actually saw a lady the other day, when a new client I just onboarded, she said, I want you to take a look at a copy of my co-parenting plan. Her kids were 15 and 16 years of age, and their co-parenting plan was 27 pages. That thing contained everything from who was going to take the kids to college interviews, who was going to help them with college applications. I mean, it was so detailed. And I'm not saying you have to go to that extreme, but I guarantee those parents know exactly who's doing what for those kids for the next 2 and 3 years based on their age, because when they turn 18, the co-parenting plan drops off. But I got to give them full credit for putting the effort in to do all that work.
Totally. And if it's all laid out in black and white, and it's all signed off by the court, and it's all, it's all legally agreed, then there is no room for error there, because it's in the plan, and I think sometimes people think that going to that level of detail is wrong because it means you're not trusting the other person, or you're making a big deal out of something that should be quite easy, but the reality is that it's not easy.
Right.
It's not easy at all to co-parent.
Right.
There's always going to be hurt feelings somewhere along the line. There's always going to be misconstrued communication somewhere along the line. There's always going to be that level of sort of distrust or conflict or something there, because if you got on great, why did the marriage end?
Right.
Yeah.
The
marriage ended for a reason.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, well, when the marriage ends, then it will get better. No, it doesn't. It just means that you're not living together anymore. There's still conflict.
Right.
There's still distrust. There's still hurt and hurt feelings, and there's still miscommunication. There's still secrecy and things that the other parent doesn't want you to know. There's so much that is hidden, that they don't want the other parent to be involved in. Sometimes for good reason, and sometimes just to be difficult.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it depends on the individual.
And we have to acknowledge that, right? Some people want to stay bitter. Some people don't want to, I call it, they like to play the victim role. They don't want to step up. They don't want to accept responsibility for what they did in the relationship that caused the breakup of the relationship. And yes, there are situations, if there's, some kind of abuse, or there's some kind of addiction or something like that, that you may have had almost nothing to do with it because that was the other person's issue going on. But in most relationships, both people play some level of a role in the breakdown of it when it happens. It took me a good year after my divorce to acknowledge that I was not the saint that I thought I was when I went through my divorce. But, I know there was things, and hopefully I learned. And, those are now things that are part of my personality when I interact with people. I've let some of that stuff I did wrong, I've hopefully let that stuff go. So, Jenni, if people work with you, can you kind of just tell us a little bit about what they would expect? Let's say they're having trouble with the co-parent or with the co-parenting situation. When people come into you, what's sort of the process for getting them onboarded with you? And then what services do you offer?
Sure. Well, the first thing we do is we have a chat, just like we're having here, and identify exactly what's going on and what kind of support that person's looking for, because I need to make sure that I'm the right person for them, because sometimes I'm not. Sometimes they require skills and services I don't offer.
Right.
That's absolutely fine. I normally know somebody that I can pass them on to and say, look, go and speak to this person. They're fantastic. They will really help. So the first step is just a chat. It doesn't cost anybody anything. It's just a Zoom call, just like this. And then there's a variety of services that I offer. So the most frequently used one is an 8 program that I do with people, which basically pulls everything apart and puts it back together again in a different way. And that really helps them with their balance. It helps them with their communication style. It helps them with their personal self-esteem and their confidence. And it helps to really kind of rebuild them inside from where they were, which was normally fairly beaten down and broken, into feeling like they actually have power again, and that they can actually make decisions for their future, for themselves and for their children. And there's no reason why they can't. And then they go ahead and they go off and they have a wonderful life. And then another service that I offer, when you have two parents that really just cannot communicate, and everything is through the court, so they're racking up thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in court fees every single time, even if it's just as simple as a gym kit.
Yeah.
It's at one parent's house and the other parents that they should have the gym kit brought over and back each time, and they'll end up going back to court over it because they're pretty much arguing over a paperclip. And I offer for those is to be a coordinator between them. So instead of going to court, they both agree to come to me, and whatever decision I make is binding for both parties. So they both kind of like present their case, and then I make the decision as to what I feel is best interest of the child. So it's not a guardian ad litem. It's not going through the cattle. It's purely and simply they agree to take an undertaking that whatever decision I make, and they pay half each, so they're financially responsible. So every time they invoke the Jenni card, they're both using my services, and they kind of pay a retainer, basically. Right. And then once they've used up that retainer, then if they want to continue having me rather than paying for court each time, then they continue doing that. So that's something else that I do. And I can also, I've forgotten for a moment. what third thing is that I do?
Are some of your programs group programs? Do you do any group work?
I do, yes.
Okay,
I do group work. Yeah, I do group work. So I do group work when I feel that there's enough similar kind of people that I can sort of put together into a group, because I have to carefully curate within each group to make sure that it works. But it's very fluid, because obviously everything changes all the time. So what people need, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a film called Nanny McPhee.
Yes.
And yes, you remember Nanny McPhee. So when the children want her, need her, but want her, she's there. When they want her, but don't need her, she goes.
Right.
And that's kind of the role that I play, is when they need me, but they don't necessarily want me, I'm there. And then when they want me and they want me to continue, and I'm saying, well, you don't need me anymore. Right. You've got this. You're flying solo now. You don't need me. And I'm kind of like pushing them out, or trying to say, go, off you go.
Well, that's the thing. You don't want to build dependency. You want these parents to be able to co-parent. Totally. So, Jenni, I love this, and I love what you do, and I so admire the work that you do, because this is so desperately needed. Because I do think a lot of times the stories we tell ourselves about what the other parent is doing and how we cannot talk and how we have this horrible history. Yes, there are some people who are never going to be able to sit down and have a meaningful conversation. And there are services in the United States. We have court-appointed parenting coordinators that not only manage the couple, but report back to the court if one parent is not cooperating with whatever the plan is. So there's all different levels of services. But if you can deal with it at that personal level, you are going to be so much farther ahead, and your kids are going to reap the benefits of your efforts. So, Jenni, we are out of time. I cannot believe how fast these conversations go. But before we get off the call, tell us, if people are interested in learning more about what you do or want to find out how to work with you, what's the best way to do that?
Okay, I have a website, which is www.coparentingwithoutconflict, all one word, all lowercase. There's no gaps, no hyphens, just coparentingwithoutconflict.com. Easy as that. Because you can't have conflict if only one person's trying to argue.
That's right. Yeah, you get real tired of arguing with nobody, don't you? Jenni, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for sharing all of this. And if you're interested in learning more, make sure you reach out to Jenni. And don't forget that there will be another episode of Spotlight on the Divorce Expert coming up shortly. So be sure to subscribe, and you will get first notification when it comes up.